Recap for Tuesday, December 2nd. I was on a plane during the session. I was not able to actually take any of these trades live because my laptop was not getting internet on the plane and only my phone was. And I cannot trade from my phone with my actual funded accounts because it's just too inefficient of a device to be able to properly enter trades fast enough. So I just paper traded the day, but I'm gonna still go over what the thoughts was. The actual trades, it took one break even and one win for like 5.4 R on the win. So when I got on, the time my Wi-Fi on my phone started finally working, we were already like half an hour into the session. And what I was watching as soon as I came on is I saw that we had just blasted over this high up here and then this big swing high over here. And I was also using this monthly level or this weekly level, which is what is this? This is just a previous weekly volume imbalance. That's not even a correct level. Should have been down there. Um, But when I came on, I was solely trying to see when we were at this point. I got on about 9. I was trying to see were these just simply were these liquidity sweeps actually going to get swept and sold off in this session, and were we going to recover from this move? I really didn't have much of a huge external idea going on because I was on my phone and I just didn't have my full setup normally. Um, and so I was just watching the behavior at this 629 and 546, really simple. This is literally the price action. When I got on, we were sitting right about here. This wants to load. Um, and yeah, we had just flown over this first target 546, held that weak level, failed to actually retest that thing, and we were pushing up over and holding the next one. The 629. So I mean, if these levels of potential liquidity are not selling off and we're cleanly holding above, and internally bullish things are happening, then I'm still bullish on this thing pushing through these targets to push to the next one. So I took my first trade. It was a break even. Right after we had this internal, we're getting over the first liquidity, we're getting over the second liquidity, we're breaking into new highs, we're holding this old high up. Uh, on this internal liquidity sweep, once we regain this liquidity right here, I took a retest of it, I remember, to just continue playing this thing in a continuation. Like we're pushing over the targets, breaking into new highs, we're pulling back to an internal sweep, we're holding this previous high. This market structure is getting bullish. So as soon as we regained here, and also this internal sweep, both of these put these wicks down, held this level. Um, because this last wick held the level here, we've already held the level twice, got back above the internal liquidity and closed back above that original higher time frame liquidity. I took this retest here and I like to stop right back underneath this candle wick because this candle wick's already held the level. In my mind, if this is going to be an internal sweep continuation move up here, we should just hold this liquidity level from back above, and this should be the bottom of a pullback to try to push this high again. So all I'm expecting out of this trade, and like most trades, I'm not expecting it to actually be the huge run. All I'm expecting is that at this current moment of price action, I'm gonna get filled and we're gonna attempt to push this high again and attempt to have a continuation here because of the way everything internally is setting up. So I was in this trade and I was break even as soon as we pushed above the candle that basically contains that bearish for value gap right there. So not when it closed, but as soon as there was some power pushing through like 0.7 R, I went break even. I believe that next candle. No, I was still in the position on this on the paper trading, and then I was break even here, and this thing didn't go, and I just got taken out break even. And this internal sweep to regain the original liquidity that I'm trying to play, failing as a sweep, uh, it didn't want to go, and I got the attempt to push into a new high, and I was break even, and it failed. So I wanted to see what we were doing. Are we actually still gonna mess around on this level, or do we actually want to sweep this thing and push off and actually sell off? So what I was watching is, okay, now that we're holding underneath it, what does this actually lead to? If this is gonna be a real liquidity sweep, of this huge swing high, I'm gonna wait to short until this 629 gets in line with this other liquidity from here, and then if we can hold underneath these, then I'll play that sweep into these lows. So that's what I was waiting to see. And I wanted to see really what we do if we're going to try to have this actually be a 629 sweep, really at this internal low and really the rebalancing of 546 if we can lose both. I remember we just kind of messed around and then started dying. And then this is where it got interesting. We're trying to have a big liquidity sweep off 629. 546 is the other high that's potentially a sweep. So if this is going to be a sweep, we should be able to get underneath this level and hold because we're supposedly sweeping liquidity within this range of price action. So when I started seeing that this sell-off can't get back below this or other liquidity, then it's making me suspect of this being a big liquidity sweep. So I wanted to see, okay, we're holding these internal lows. What's the follow through? I remember it started actually trying to lose it again for a second because originally we tried to spike it and instantly kind of uh, stop this idea of both of these being a continual liquidity sweep down. Um, Held it, then we tried to actually lose it, and the bottom of this attempt to actually close underneath and close this level just sweeps this interior low and starts regaining. So at this point in my mind, we have a potential big liquidity sweep with both of these. However, this attempt to regain the lower liquidity is failing hard. We had try to hold it originally and hold at this level. We can't go anywhere. Then we try to lose it. And this is important to me. This really internal price action is important to me. The bottom of this whole entire move to try and lose this thing just sweeps this internal low and then gets back above. So if this started holding this thing back up, then I was starting to get interested in this internal piece of price action to be bullish to try and regain, reclaim this original liquidity because it's failing right now to step in line with here. So if we're gonna fail right now at this point, and we're gonna just hold internal things, then I want to be long to at least catch the attempt to go regain this and fail this liquidity selling off right now. So everything happens there. Then we start holding this. So once we started holding this thing from above off this internal sweep and this candle held this internal liquidity also from above, I wanted to get long in here and I started to ask myself, how can I actually get long? Well, I can get involved in a break and retest somewhere in this range by determining what internal thing is actually the 1 minute resistance here. What is the 1 minute resistance that's stopping this move back up from holding here? Because if we have a strong key level of resistance, like a 1 minute wick, and then we have all these bullish higher time frame ideas happening, and then we get a break on that 1 minute thing, I'm trying to take an entry right there. So we have the internal sweep. We're holding up this liquidity since closing back above. This next candle fails to have real strong follow through, and it kind of really confirms that this wick is acting as resistance right now, along with this level too, to stop the immediate push back up off of this 546 liquidity holding. So now in my mind, I want to use this wick as a break and retest if we can actually get the break on it. But in terms of a stop loss, I don't want to have just a random stop loss right underneath this wick. I want my stop loss to be underneath whatever I think the like last retrace into a prominent area is before this thing's gonna potentially break. And for me, yes, this low is good because this low held this liquidity. But in my mind, we've already held this multiple times. This last candle is just holding this volume imbalance. This volume imbalance is like the really internal thing that's trying to hold this attempt to sell off this 1 minute wake up. So if we hold this thing, that volume imbalance with this wick and then break, I'm fine putting a stop loss right underneath there and not this one because we've already held this level and now we're holding the internal 1 minute thing. So it's kind of gonna, I'm expecting a stair stepping up if this is gonna actually give an attempt. So it's kind of like really involved, but this is just the way I like to do it. And then once we get this immediate break off of that, everything's holding. My idea is starting to come together that this sell off here is not going to actually be a sweep, at least in the moment of both of these liquidity pools, because they're failing to get in line. And this has had multiple attempts to break this thing, and it's just being really internal, grabbing like lows and buying them up. So as soon as this wick breaks, after everything holds, I took the retest at the top of the wick, and then with my stop at that wick that held that volume imbalance. So I could have taken, and if I was on my computer, I potentially would have tried to get a lower entry because this thing closed shallow. It's high probability that it'll retrace a little deeper into this wick and I can just get a lower fill. But I was on my phone and I was paper trading, so I just took the position like this. And I'm just expecting from here this thing to at least attempt to try to push back into this high. I don't know if it's actually going to run this whole entire thing, I never know where it's actually going to go. I just know that in this moment, in this immediate piece of price action, I think there's a really high probability that this is going to push at least a little bit in my direction to the point where I can get break even. And then from there, the idea will either play out or it won't. I'll get a small trail for 1 hour, or maybe it'll be a big move. I don't know. I never know what's actually going to happen. But I wanted to go break even. Basically, once we just started trying to push this high, I wasn't gonna wait till we hit these highs because we can try to push these highs, fail, and then die. So if it showed me, price showed me that it's trying to push these highs, I'm going break even because I'm not getting caught in this thing missing to push those highs. So I believe the next candle pushed actually deeper. Yeah. And then I was break even once we got this push up. And from here, this thing just started exploding. As soon as I pushed 2R, I began trailing. I really liked, I had some good practice on this trade. I guess practice is the right word, but this was a good trade to be able to practice my trailing, the way I trail. I believe at this point I trailed to the 50% of this bottom fair value gap for like 0.7 R, something along that line. Yeah, zero point 0.9 R. I just wanted to give room here because it was extremely aggressive. I believe once we push up into this next level, I might have trailed. I might have actually had this trail just at this, giving room for this fair value gap, and then once we tried to hold this thing or continue pushing, I pushed the trail up. Anyways, I ended up trailing out at this high up here once we filled this whole range. I was proud of myself also with the point in which I was at with this trail right here. Once we had pushed up over this level, I didn't lock in the trail underneath this low until we could get back over this and close back over this original liquidity. And I remember at this point, I actually had a trail at like the 75% of this fair value gap right here. Anyways, this thing just really ran. I was able to stay aggressive, but giving some good room with the trail. And as soon as we got to pop over here, overneath this high or above this high, and failed to push that level, I locked the trail back on a retest of that high, or I guess 5.2. And yeah, I think this was the end of the move. I turned the chart off after that. I think this thing actually died and failed to continue going. Yeah. Like these conditions today, the way this market was moving, this is extremely clean. It's kind of annoying my laptop wouldn't connect to the internet. Would have caught this 5R. Um, but I think it was really clean. Something I can say though, even just like, cause me personally, I tend to get into over analysis to a pretty high degree, especially in in the levels I'm watching pre-market, like what pre-market liquidity I'm watching. And I don't want to just get rid of the way I'm doing things because it's working. It's just the cognitive overload can kind of overload. Uh, and what I'm saying is today I noticed just getting on the charts 30 minutes into the session a little bit more nonchalantly, not spending 15 minutes before trying to get an idea. I felt I was able to read price for what it was actually doing in the moment really clean. And I liked the two trades I took a lot. I think that first break even, I liked that entry. I think everything was really good. It had potential to be a continuation push and be a bunch of R pushing up into seven or the 721, the next target, maybe like 6 or 7 R. Actually, how much R was that potential? Retested that underneath here. Like yeah, potential for 7R. And then I like this trade too. It was a this was potentially going to be a big sweep of 629 and 546 if they could get in line. 629 sold off, 546 could not get in line. Very clearly could not get below this internally. I could get a good read, and I had a good stop loss placement and a good way to get involved on a break and retest of a resistance wick. And this thing just exploded to the high end of the range, and I did good with the trail. So although it was a paper day, I think it was a great read on price.